What is up, YouTube? It's Aaron back here with the channel. We are back with Rihan and D. Say hello, my friends.
Hello, my
Greetings.
friends.
Alrighty, and we have D and Rahan playing a Dracotail mirror match, which was one of the decks, or one of the matches that we expect to see fair often, now that Dracotail is considered one of the best decks. So we're going to learn a little bit about these interactions and see what we can take away from it. So this is watching from D's perspective, who is pretty much brand new to the deck. He was playing Vanquish Soul and Malice in the past, and Rahan, who is a bit of a experienced duelist with the deck. And we're gonna get to hear both of their perspectives. D from how he's learning the deck, and then Rahan how he's learning to play the mirror match how it's becoming way more popular. So we start off with Rihan playing. We have Ash here. D, tell us your initial thoughts about your goal when you're ashing the mirror.
Um, one first I want to say that there's like different variations like the obviously like the Brandon Freezer or Magistus, so I don't want to like ask too early. Also
Mm-hmm.
learning that like economy of the card matters, that makes sense. Like it needs, if I'm gonna ask something, it needs to be like good,
Yeah.
or you just kind of loop yourself without, you just have less materials for 5 mana.
Mm-hmm.
So and in this matchup, it also could be strong. You can kind of push through boards with the Ash, like with the traps or things like that. So I didn't want to. Um, there's not enough information, in my opinion, for to ask the Lucas or anything like that.
Yeah. So I think from like the not Dracotail perspective, I'm generally pretty comfortable either hitting Rahu or just waiting it to hit the traps if you have something like a lightning storm to hit flame. Um, or just yeah, like the Rahu if you think they're gonna set two traps off of you. Maybe like an end of turn Ketsu to cut off 5 mana. Um, when you're playing the mirror match, I'm not sure how that plays out. Rohan, what is your experience with it?
I think it depends on the strength of your hand. Usually, like if they're leading with a Lucaeus, normally they're obviously adding 5 mana. If they go 5 mana to fusion summon,
Mm-hmm.
then I just hold my Ash for Rahu because the typical line goes like Ketu and then goes into Rahu. But basically, if they lead with 5 mana, that means that their only actual realistic option, if they normal summon Lucaeus, is to fusion summon with Rahu. And if you Ash the Rahu, they're cut off of traps along with additional effects.
Mm-hmm. So all this, we skipped around a little bit. So we saw Ash Blossom get used on Brandon Fusion, which I think is just like a pretty easy to like identify target as like being very good. It'll set a Dracotail name now that we've got a light Dracotail because this is post Doom. And then obviously, like I think Mirror Jade is a card that's gonna accrue a lot of value over the course of the game. You can obviously Arthur it back, but I think you'd probably rather try and push through the Dracotail engine and board itself than deal with a Mirror Jade. So we get to the end of the turn, we see Glomel, Arthur both traps, and I assume we're gonna get to for probably a pan. We saw 5 mana in hand, and I think maybe Ketu for something else. Lulu maybe. So Urgula.
Probably Urgot.
So yeah, in this situation, you could probably take a guess that there is a pan in hand if they're not adding it. Either pan or Malulu if you're adding Urgula, I assume is a decent guess. And we get to D's
Uh,
turn. Solid draw. So tell us what you're thinking.
so I know, obviously know the cards in hand, so I was just trying to see how, like, first I'm obviously new to the deck. Looking at the gameplay now, I think it's changed a little. I was looking at this deck when I was playing. Rihan is very just like simplistic.
Mm-hmm.
I pretty much kind of mirrored the same thing he did when I normal the Lucaeus and stuff like that. When in reality, with that spot, I felt like maybe like a reach, but I probably lost instantly off the normal summon because um, if my mana didn't really get any value, and I'm not really applying pressure just by normal summoning the Lucas, knowing that he has 5 mana and things to chain with. I need to check for non-engine, which branded fusion probably would have been better there. Um,
I
as we
agree.
go as we go over the replay, he never used the flame because it never got, like, there was no need to. He pretty much out my board, and all I did was normal summon, but it was really crucial there. That I shouldn't have normal summoned. I should have started with Brandon Fusion. That had to been responded with. Now if he has again, as we go through the replay and he has non-engine, there's nothing I can do with that. But if he has the flame, then it's, I can make it, maybe he doesn't have the ash for the Rahu and kind of go from there. But I lost a lot of value normal summoning Lucaeus there.
Another deck building perspective item is that Branded Fusion can also offer a lot of flexibility. So if you activate Branded Fusion as the opposing player, you don't quite know what you're playing in the extra deck. Normally, typically, people play Lubellion, Albion, or Sanctifier, sending off targets respectively, whether it be Malulu, whether it be Frixel. But I've also heard discussion for people playing Alba Letidus, being able to send either Urgula or Pan from deck as well.
Mhm.
So, for example, if I see a Branded Fusion, I don't know what your target could be, but I know you're definitely being able to like add a body on board, potentially get to a Mirror Jade, and get your Dracotail cards in rotation. So if deck building wise, like you're sending an Urgula, I think that applies a lot of pressure immediately. So I agree. I think you lead with Branded Fusion because it's just such a bomb card that I think it deserves some respect in terms of response.
That's kind of why I was anticipating you saying you're supposed to wait on it. Um, I guess the argument for it is you'd rather get your Dracotail engine rolling compared to branded. So like if you are gonna get a card negated, that's probably the best because if that gets negated, you would potentially like lose that on an additional card when you resolve Rebellion or whatever other fusion that you're going for. I just assume it's generally Mirror Jade. Um, but like yeah, I think you're probably just doomed either way. Like obviously knowing that you have Ash Blossom. My other thought was if you lead Lucaeus, your goal is like lead Lucaeus plus 5 mana. But uh, I guess like the main thing that I wanted to be considerate of is once you summon Lucaeus, you have to play monsters before you play spells because once you commit to the board, Galamos now has a live target. When if you activate the spells early, you can kind of play around the Galamo, force him to use an additional effect like either a horn or a 5 mana in a spot where he may not want to if he wants to get that pop off. So I don't hate the lead Lucaeus because it may force him to like use horn on his own Arcaline in a weird spot to try and get value. To get the Glom off, and he may like be wary of that, considering if you have more monsters in hand, like what value does the Glom really have? But I think this game seems pretty rough, no matter how you look at it. Obviously, knowing that there's Ash Blossom.
Yeah, I think one of the things that Dee pointed out also was that the 5 mana technically wouldn't get immediate value. So, for example, if I had like a Veiler here,
Mhm.
then there's no way to actually dodge the effect Veiler
Yeah,
with the 5 mana because you just don't have any other monsters. Whereas,
that's
like,
fair.
if you had a second body that, there's potentially a way that you can just dodge it and get your effects off.
Yeah, I think you're. Yeah, so we know theoretically three cards in hand. Um, so if the fourth one is Veiler, Veiler Ash, anything meaningful, I think we lose the game no matter what. Just because Flame checks Branded Fusion, and if that fourth card checks Rahu in some way, then we're probably in a bad spot. But you can still get into a grind with this deck, just like activating the spell card. So I don't know. I think I understand. Like I understand why he went lead Lucaeus. Like I think it makes sense. Because like this will ideally force some kind of interaction, but at the same time, like if he has another interaction, he may just lose either way. So it may just be worth to lead Branded Fusion.
But one thing to note here, so I added the Urgula here.
Mhm.
There's a reason to. I think this was wrong.
Yeah.
I think because I just, there was no reason to use 5 mana. Like I was trying to get the most value off 5 mana, and so I just like kind of loop myself with
I
cards.
think this is like
Maybe
pretty disrespectful of Rahan, to be honest.
How?
Like, what if he just has another Dracotail name?
If he has another Dracotail name in hand, then I feel like he would have led with the 5 mana action first.
If I agree. Like he was like 5 mana pitch two from hand.
Yeah, because like there's no guarantee
Why?
that your art.
Why would you do that when you have Lucius to dodge with like you summon Lucius like Baylor? Okay, change 5 mana. Like I don't. Why would you ever use 5 mana preemptively when that card plays around hand traps?
Um, I feel like in this scenario, like, hmm,
Like you maybe
good question.
like I think you can argue to pop here because okay, it turns off a spell, but I think I would rather like force him to set duplicates of the same card, and then like later in the
So
turn maybe get value off of like Michael popping a set.
the issue
Um,
is that's never happening, right? Or like I'm immediately losing value off of my traps here because he has an Urgula in hand. So because he's gonna fuse with the
mhm.
Urgula, if I don't pop this, then he gets additional sets, and then the Urgula when it's sent, I'm just never gonna have a chance afterwards. That's the issue.
Yeah, but my point is like if he has another name here, now you have zero traps.
Mm, I suppose.
And then you also like in the other situation, like you could potentially still shuffle one trap back with the other because he only gets to pop one. But now in this situation, if like he has another name in hand, now you lose all of your trap value because you can't activate flame in the next chain where he pops it.
I'm not gonna lie, I don't know
Are you
why.
letting it resolve? So are you letting 5 mana resolve and then
So
react and
I'm
power
very new
through?
to this matchup, but that was just a thought that I had was like if you have another monster in hand, this is like a really big punish, a potential punish for like him. I'm not saying you shouldn't use things proactively because, like I said, I'm still learning. But that was my first thought was like, okay, what if he has another monster name in hand here? Like Rahan has no more real interactions, and like these spell cards in hand are gonna get a lot of value.
Yeah. That's something I didn't see initially there. It's a
This
good
is why I
point
was
there.
content with the lead Lucius because if he doesn't proactively use it, which I think he should not, because he should be respectful of your deck being mostly monsters, that like you can potentially start trying to pick apart his board early, maybe get the Urgla out of hand and force out the flame. That way you can resolve these spell cards later. Like if we're being fair to Rohan, he may be supposed to pop Lucius because like he's using 5 mana so he can't dodge something in the future. And then we're also cutting off a potential name. Like let's say you drew a Fua for turn or like a dead Valor. You're now forced to use Urgla plus Valor, and that in that situation, so you're getting less value total. But I still think it's like we'll say sketchy at best to do it because if you still resolve this 5 mana and get both of your spells, you're in like a pretty content situation because you do remove the other trap card.
So I think one of the considerations I had was I think he just makes an Arthalion and bounces my guy anyways.
Mm-hmm.
So okay, I would rather just get the draw and get the immediate value off the Golamo and then potentially just force more cards out of his hand so I just have more hand knowledge. I think that's like one of the reasons. This was a few days ago, so I don't exactly
Yeah,
remember
yeah, yeah, but,
completely.
like we can just look at this as like a new situation where like if I like I said I don't think there's art like I don't think it's like a completely incorrect play to do it, but I do definitely see some potential punishes. So we go for this because the other thing is like you could potentially still do like this horn thing like in the next chain. Because if he
Yeah,
goes
that's what I was
like
thinking
because I
too.
don't think he can
Yeah.
afford to go like Arthur bounce your board and just like expect to win the game because if he does not kill you, he lost so much value off of the old bounces and like you still have some potential interactions in your hand. You also have your own 5 mana in hand. Like I think it's almost impossible to kill the Dracotail Mirror going second without like multiple bombs. And you obviously have Ash in your hand, so if you just play like the long game, I think you're gonna be pretty happy. And like losing
Yes,
both of your traps here, I think is like a potential lose condition. You can do a grind and like you don't have access to it.
I agree.
So we go Rahu, you have Ash, and then yeah, you scoop. You can brand fusion, pitch flame, or yeah, you still have flame rotation. Okay. Yeah, I think that game is actually pretty interesting. Like the Draco Timir, I think is pretty intricate. We'll see how all the non-engine decisions make things play out. Like obviously, if you're respecting the mirror in the form of some hand traps, like you may have a worse matchup against a deck like Mitsurugi. So like this back and forth, I think is going to be really interesting to see play out over the course of the format. So Fenrir, Bell, Fimena, Rahu, Malulu, and we're going first as the mirror match. Do you walk us through it?
So obviously now, I mean, the lead is with Fenrir because you want to check 5 mana. Um, as I'm learning the deck and just trying to like navigate for your resources,
Mm-hmm.
I'm just trying to make sure that obviously I get to the traps and have 5 mana back to hand. This isn't a hand where I can do the um like the link summon plays. This is like
Yeah,
just straight like locked in the
just
fusions.
fusion.
So um I think I do Malulu, I believe, first. I'm not sure if looking at the hand now, maybe I save the normal summon for the Lucius.
Yeah,
Um, I think there's how this plays out. There is some like checkpoints to where like I lose a lot of value as I'm trying to navigate that stuff because one thing we were kind of mentioning too, game one, if you sequence like some things wrong, your board looks like very weak, or if you play it just like um just like the casual like normal almost some add 5 mana set traps. The inboard all looks kind of the same in that way, but trying to get there is differently. And then if
yeah,
your opponent knows where to um stop you, then it's like it's downhill for you.
yeah.
Lastly, based on how I've played, like even game one and now with my hands, you can telegraph. Like with Rihan, he's played this deck so well. He can probably telegraph what I have based on the sequence of how I'm playing it,
Hmm.
and can also get like obviously punished that way.
Yeah, I think. So I think like having watched this deck played a fair bit, the going first lines are there's ways to optimize. But I think like the only real way to like see skill in a Dracotail player going first, if you're playing just like the normal deck, is just like how efficiently you went about your combos. Like how few cards did you reveal in hand, um, how well did you play around specific hand traps. I think that's just like the main skill set I'm gonna see when I play against like the pure Dracotail deck. Is like how well did they maximize all of their cards. Um, so this
I
hand
agree.
looks like a way that you could potentially utilize a card like Frixel to get Malulu in rotation and also like bounce it back and get it on board. Which I think seems like a good idea in the mirror match when you want to set up like 2 or 3 potential different layers of fusion summoning to like play around different cards. Because you want to set up a card like Secret Terror on your opponent's turn. Rahan, I'm gonna let him like play this out a little bit. What are your thoughts?
Um, in this matchup, obviously you're leading Fenrir, add. There are a few. Okay, so I think in this, so I think this is wrong. I don't think in you lead with Rahu post side. The issue is like this line just
Retaliating.
uber plays hard into retaliating C. So I think for here you're supposed to normal summon the Malulu because the other consideration
Mhm.
is if you have an Arthalion, you're gonna try to add back cards. The Malulu can also just like help dodge the Arthalion because like 5 mana fusion summoning from hand isn't great value because you lose the 5 mana effect to set a card. And then because you're also just having to use other cards in your hand as well. But if you have a Malulu, you can just use Malulu, use Arthalion, and the 5 mana. And then if you send a card like Urgula, you can just add it back. So it just creates more efficiencies where you're just not wasting cards.
Makes sense. So
You're,
these
it,
Rahu Prime Mana, so this is probably like a game one play where you want to maximize the effect of 5 mana and Urgula. So you can like bounce it back with Arthalion, use the effect of 5 mana if you want, and then still add it back at the end of the turn. Um, we have Flame, use Galamo. Okay, makes sense since we have the gear set up already. Horn Flame. This is post Doom, right? So you're citing Sting, I assume, and trying to set up all 3 traps. Okay, so sense. We get the 5 mana
I think
back in
we
hand.
talked about this a little bit.
yeah, I think what we talked about was there was no reason to actually go for the Arthalion, because when we're going for the Arthalion there, like there's just no reason because our end board just needs to have like the multiple traps along
Mm-hmm.
with no diffuse on our opponent's turn.
Yeah.
So I think initially D was going for Arthalion have to add back. Um and it's like, okay, you're under Fua, so realistically you're only ever actually making one fusion play.
Okay.
And that fusion play that should be providing immediate value should be the Gulamo. But then we kind of went back again and we thought about, okay, well, what provides more value in this matchup? Is it the trap cards, or is it the Gulamo? And ultimately, we decided that the flexibility of the trap cards was more relevant,
Mm-hmm.
because of the draws than the Gulamo pop. So what we ended
Uh,
up doing,
there's we should not have been able to. Oh, so you're saying you resolved whatever Urgula from deck and then 5 mana Malulu from hand?
yes, so we ended up
Okay.
sending two from hand because we're like, okay, well, we're only making one play here, so the
Yes.
most value that we can get out of our Rahu here is by sending multiple cards, resolving and setting 3 traps, and then
Mm-hmm.
using our Thalia to add back Urgula and 5 mana.
What are your
The key
thoughts
here,
on sending Frixel instead of Urgula and then normal summoning that to get Malulu on board as well?
I think having Urgla in the matter is really good. I think earlier on in game one, you said, "Hey, hey, what if we use our Gulamo to just target down the sets that they place?"
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is, like, Glamo can always be interacted with rather easily.
Yeah.
But if you have a 5 mana with the Urgla in hand, that's really difficult to interact with because now your sets for your spells and traps are just always easy prey.
I thought it was because of how oppressive Secretarian can be in some really specific situations that I would prioritize having like Malulu for Arthalion and then like 5 mana for the Secretarian and vice versa. Or not obviously Malulu locks you into Dracotail fusion monsters, but you don't have 2 options of fusion on your opponent's turn because our hand, when you're looking at it, isn't actually that impressive. Like you have good plays, but like in terms of like legitimate interrupts, because the traps are so conditional, you don't really have like too many like ways to I think like proactively like do something to what they.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a reasonable consideration. To just respect Secretariat in the middle.
Yeah, because
In the
Malulu
mirror.
also seems really good as like a chain link too. Like okay, summon Arthur line. Okay, negate your Arthur line, and then like if they or like go like negate their Galamo, and then like later in the turn you can like go for Secret Terran. That's kind of what I was thinking. I think Urgla is obviously solid, but like going second, you definitely have more accessibility of like setting duplicates of the same card. And in general, like you have flame, so I think you have to be pretty respectful of like using the spell cards. Like I don't know the correct word, but like they're going to be very specific in the way that they're trying to sequence it because they have to play through flame first. So we know all the traps here. So lead Rahu. One last thing before we get like into your turn. Ghost Bell going first. I don't think has too many relevant effects unless I'm missing something.
That's correct.
Okay, so
Yeah,
it's like the trap cards and like maybe cut off an Urgula add back.
yeah.
Okay, so I'm not sure if there are better options on this side, but this is something that like we'll may see going forward. Is like going first, you may not be able to side out all the cards that you like in the matchup. So, but in fairness, I think that this deck can get into a bit of a grind, so it's probably like not the worst option. So Rahu,
Yeah, we had other stuff to like test and stuff like that, and there
yeah,
wasn't like
yeah, of course. Lists are being finalized. I'm just like making observations. So Rahu,
yeah.
we don't have any immediate interactions to this. And we can theoretically like out the Fender in the immediate by either dumping Pan or like Arthaline bouncing it. So kind of like a negative situation for the Fenrir. We'll see how this plays out. We go Flame. Think pretty normal negates effect, so he can't do another one. And then if he has Ash or whatever, yeah, we're doing okay. Druid Worm. How much value that has in this matchup? I guess like not awful, but not fantastic.
So this is so King of the Swap is something that people have put under the spotlight of like, okay, this is a pretty mediocre card. And I've been a King of the Swap hater ever since it was introduced into the deck. But I was trying it in this matchup because I wanted to see the value that Guardian Chimera provides this matchup.
Yeah.
And I found out that it wasn't a lot of value. It's actually pretty mediocre. But it was a card that I wanted to try to see, hey, now that we're in a format with slightly lower ceiling, it would perhaps having additional ways to fusion is more engine be more valuable than just having more non-engine.
No, I think that's a. I mean, this is the type of thing that you should be testing. Like we're seeing the format become like pretty engine centric. Like we're seeing like Mitsurugi, which is like a pretty like engine heavy deck, Yami and etc. So like having a lot of ways to fuse is like a good thing to do to like play through a lot of potential like negates and just like interaction points. The one thing that you do have to consider is like when you look at the problems of your deck, one fusion summoning may be a little bit of a problem, but then you look at things like post side, like okay, does polymerization fix the problem of retaliating sea or dimensional barrier? So it may fix one problem and then just like still contribute to another one. So there's always that give and take.
I agree. And I think one of the other things that we can take away from this replay is just what non-engine is actually valuable versus not invaluable in this matchup.
Mm-hmm.
So I think early on you just already, highlighted a couple of different ways that Fenrir can just get really outed really easily. So I don't think Fenrir is a card that provides crazy value in the mirror. Neither do Druis and Bell. And I think that's something that you'll see as the games progress as well.
Yeah. So get a big chain link off here. We get to resolve 3 different effects. Why did you choose to sting early? If you just have like a quick thought on that.
I think I'm not even sure. I think we were talking about it, and I was I knew the Chimera was there.
Mhm.
I was trying to like I guess I missed the interaction to try to like hit the poly, I guess, in
Yeah,
hindsight. And
that was
that's what I
going to be my
did.
next line. Is like I'm pretty sure I would just like wait
Oh,
until the chain resolves and banish the poly.
yeah.
That way, Fenrir he's like forced to hit the Fenrir or pop the like if he does that, he's forced to put Chimera in defense mode, or risk Fenrir banishing it on resolution or Horn bouncing it.
The defense doesn't ever come up, right? Because I'm always able to, because like the poly hits the grave after.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think he gets a chance to like actually use both horn and sting, right? Because if I activate
No,
Guardian Command,
it wasn't.
Oh,
So in a situation where you don't have Pan Malulu to clear Fenrir, like if it's like Lucius and whatever, I'm just like other names, like your hand maybe it might not be that good. That is a potential way to get value off of this thing. I wasn't saying you horn stuff will back sting. I was just saying maybe a potential way to like interact with like you in like a more meaningful. Because
yeah,
banishing
I
these
think
two, I don't think provide anything like real in terms of like interactions.
I think one of the takeaways for me from this play was that I think going into the mirror match, even if you have access to a card like Guardian Chimera, I don't really think it's worth it unless you have your actual engine set up. When it comes to cards like Glawmill, adding Urgula, like Lucius there just gave me no immediate value whatsoever because it had to be set to play on the Fenrir. But my thought was, okay, if I can just set up my half board, clear his cards, deny him follow up, then maybe I have somewhat of a decent chance in this game. But I think just setting the Lucaris and not being able to get its effect and not actually having my full engine online was
Mhm.
definitely costly this game. And I think a card like Guardian Chimera probably comes up as like your third push when you actually have exhausted your other options and have actually got bodies into the board.
I will say that that was a good point of the Fender. Was that Fender did force Lucas to be set instead of used in that situation. So like if you didn't have Fender on the board, then you would have to uh like
What the
you
heck?
you would be able to get summon it and get the value. Oh wait. Just keep going. So we're here. Yeah. And then you're looking at this from Deep's perspective. You have 7 cards in hand. And you can just kind of like do whatever you want. Honestly, like Rahan's probably not able to kill you, and if he is, you can just like summon a Druid for him to like stay alive. So you're kind of content just getting into the grind game, and you have a lot of cards to make things happen. Okay, and then so Rahan, you scooped there. You just like didn't think you could like win a grind there.
Yeah, there's no way. I think I'm pretty sure he flame negated my Rahu, if I'm not mistaken,
He
that
did,
game.
yes. So you still
Yeah,
like
so
Ketu live.
yeah, and so but like my Ketu wasn't actually going to be able to fuse something meaningfully because I think I just had my um 5 mana play, and it just wasn't gonna get me where I need to be compared to his 7 cards in hand plus like the Arthalion coming back and all that jazz.
Yeah. All right, so game 3, a lot of good spell cards. Unfortunately, not really what you're looking to draw. Have y'all considered siding down on the spells post side, or is that something that you do at all?
We
Yes.
were talking about with the brand infusion. Do you take that out or not? We didn't do it here. I did side out a Rahu. I just drew it, and
Yeah,
again, like there wasn't a lot of cards going second into this
yeah,
matchup, which is why like you see the Bestial. Ideally, I don't want that card in there. One thing Rion pointed out that's like a slight note is like if they're doing the whole like brand infusion stuff, like uh does Nib or Bestials come into play? Because like, are they trying to like extend and make this like huge board? Because the deck generally doesn't like play into Nib and stuff like that. But if they're trying to do this full combo,
hmm
do we consider like keeping that card, knowing that they want to do that?
Yeah,
yeah,
like it's a bit of a chicken game, right? Like game one, you're never playing into Nib, but
yeah.
normally your opponent should always be setting up Nib into this matchup. So this is always kind of where I'm like, okay, I can kind of just play a bit more greedy, knowing the fact that Nib should be sided out in this matchup.
Yeah, and I'll say like this is where like some high level players like make a lot of like big reads in like tough situations. Like you're top 16, you're playing the mirror, you're choosing second. Maybe you leave it in Nibiru because you're seeing your opponent go really aggressive like in specific spots. So it's obviously a thing that you don't respect to the utmost extent, but at the same time you do have to like be at least a little bit considerate of like someone who you think it like you respect as a player capable of making that decision. Really quick on the brand diffusion thing, I don't think I'd ever take out like an additional layer of push going second. I would definitely like lower like the number that I have of like my duplicates because these are way more accessible than hard life fusion.
Yeah, it'd probably be like Rahu to 2.
Yeah, well, I would side Rahu and Ketu down the 2 before I ever take out brand diffusion. So we
I
see Rahan's
think
full board. What if was no? I think Pan, 5 mana, and Frixel at this point. Maybe not Pan, but I know we know these two.
Yeah, I think there was a slight misstep there. I think your Bestial should have been used on the Frixel.
On the or yeah, either one honestly.
On the Frixel,
um
it's also a one of, but it opens you up to then Ketu getting.
yeah,
That's fair.
that's why I didn't do it. Like I did have it, I was like, well, I can use it here, but like it's another example of why the Bestial is just probably just not overall good here.
Yeah,
Because then I know that you have the 5 minutes and stuff, so that just goes get Ketu, and you're like I have to fight through more stuff,
Mhm.
and that trade isn't like worth just hitting the Frixel when I have more things to worry about in that
yeah, because
sense.
you acknowledge that it's a one of, but it's also recyclable through your traps if like it actually comes up during game. Like that first trap can just
And
shuffle it
also
back.
acknowledging too, like game one, well at the beginning, how if I don't need to use the monsters, then they're just materials.
Mhm.
So if I can get further, I'll just use the Bistil as a
Yeah,
material.
yeah. If you have more spells in your hand, maybe you could justify. Like if he goes normal summon Frixel, I think there's probably a legitimate argument to Druid Storming preemptively. That way he doesn't get the effect at all to bounce it back to hand. So that way he's like committed a
Right.
body to board, and you got to remove a resource. But because you don't have any other monster in hand, like you probably are going to need it as like an actual small.
I will say with this end board, like it's super simplistic. And this is actually that defense to attack thing is something
It
that I talked about
matters.
in the last.
Yeah.
And so we're here learning from our previous videos as well.
Yes.
And this is what I mentioned in the previous video where like you want to make sure that you're summoning your monsters in attack position so you can horn your own monsters. Because if you try to horn your opponent's monsters, there's always a liability that your opponent can clear their monster off their field, which denies you the horn effect and the ability to put back a card and draw. So putting your own monster in attack position is much more valuable, along with the Malulu effect. If you use it and bounce the Malulu back, you get 2 cards from hand, which allows Arthalion to bounce 2.
Yeah.
One of the things I wanted to point out was what I usually go for in my end boards in the mirror match is the ability to make a Secretarion when needed,
Mhm.
along with so like I always try to end with a spellcaster in hand because you usually always have Arthalion on the field, or if you have Gulamil as what you're prioritizing into Fua, then always ending with like a dragon in your hand as well, so that you have the option to make Secretarion in the mirror match.
Yeah.
Secretarion in the mirror match should not be made turn 1 because it is extremely easy to get rid of if your opponent is playing into your board, and Secretarion is already on the field. It should be a card that should be layered somewhat kind of like what Winda with Schism used to be, a card that doesn't appear on the field until it really needs to be. The other thing is something that you pointed out in game 1 is putting Malulu on the field to chain to the first fusion that they summon, so that you can actually negate it if they choose to activate the effect. So that is something that I also wanted to put onto the field right now. And then the last piece is if you look at my sets, like I'm just drawing 3 on my opponent's turn. And I think that's
Yeah.
where the deck gets insane value post dude is I am like these are very marginal disruptions. Like if anybody looks at these traps, they're basically like it's basically rescue ways, right? When you look at the rescue ways traps, they never provided any insane like threat when you look at them like on their
Mhm.
own. But when you look at the fact that they're being set off of 1 card, such as turbulence, and their opponent is able to go +4,
Yeah.
that's what is much more threatening and daunting. Is not the actual effects of the traps themselves, but what it really means for their game state. And in this case, if all 3 of my traps go off, that means your plays are being disrupted, and I'm drawing 3 cards.
Yeah. And also the same thing with rescue Ace, you're able to recycle it over the course of multiple turns, and if you get into a grind game, you just can't win that. Like where they're drawing cards and recycling all. So we draw Ash for turn. Right, yeah, Ash. So we now can use this to interrupt a flame, or we can use it as a monster, most likely just to interrupt one of the traps. Leading Ketu here. Probably good. I assume you're adding. Actually, is it not Rahu? I don't know. This is like me not knowing the deck.
Um. So there's a consideration for uh Rahu. Um. I think but I think I'm not sure Rihanna gets kind of linear. I think if you start with Rahu, I believe, because you can only do uh Dracotail monsters there. I'm not sure if you
That's
would
why I
want.
consider. I thought leading Rahu would be better. That way you can later on use Ketu for a different fusion if you deemed it necessary. And like I feel like
Do you
early,
want to-
just like getting a Galamo on board to like start trying to force things out is like what I was initially thinking.
I
Yeah,
agree.
that's a good point. Yeah, that's probably better.
Yeah, because I would rather
Also,
Arthur line later in the turn when I have way more resources in my graveyard than like doing it now. Maybe like bouncing an Arthur line, he's gonna horn chain, get it back to hand, draw a card for free. It just seems like you're not gonna get too much. I think the other consideration maybe is leading branded fusion. You may get punished by like chain 5 mana for Secretarion. I think that's like my big concern.
Mhm.
I think that's
But
pretty
at least you
decent.
like force something out. Sorry.
That's relatively decent to out. I think in this sequence, I think the correct sequence was probably Branded Fusion, then Rahu, and then Ketu. But Ketu
Yeah,
is also interesting here, right? Because if your opponent activates Ketu, it's like, do you flinch with the Malulu? Because if you don't use Malulu there, then your opponent can just get a free Arthalion off, right? Without being inhibited by like the effect negation danger from Malulu.
sure. Yeah.
But like if your opponent uses Ketu here and your opponent flinches and uses Malulu, then you're not necessarily like forced to fusion summon still.
Yeah, I think I would still just lead the Rahu because like Artholion isn't getting you legitimate value here.
I
And
agree.
I think you're pretty far behind. You kind of need to like hope that things go your way. So if you go Rahu, you may be able to force out the Malulu, like get the Glommo to burn a Malulu like earlier than he may have wanted. Um, but this game seems pretty difficult to win, so probably just like you have to try and maximize all of your effects. And I don't even know if you can even like win the game this turn, so like it may just be like too far gone, honestly.
I think
It's,
generally Ketu is stronger than Rahu. So I think when you're playing
Agreed,
into a
especially
board,
going second because you get to like count as many
yeah,
cards as you want to park the line.
yeah, I think you generally want to lead with Rahu into Gulamo. And I think like usually the ordering for going second into most decks is Rahu for Gulamo, so that you're able to force as many cards as possible because they can only chain so many times to like.
Yeah, exactly. Like at some point, you have to just accept that Guillermo is gonna pop something and just be content with that because they have so many different effects off of the first monster that they sent off of the Rahu, a potential Ketsu, and then an additional fusion monster that gets summoned off of the Ketsu. Like that's on its own three different chains that are gonna like force out an interaction or just like trigger the Guillermo. So getting it on the board early and then just like saying how what are you gonna do this like activating Rahu here probably forces Malulu just on principle, whether or not he's trying to like out Arthelion or just prevent Golomo from being super disruptive in the future.
also like that line too. I think we are, yeah. Um, Also with your line, Aaron, when I start with Rahu, there's a legitimate reason not to chain to the flame there because I want Ketu and Brandon Fusion stronger. So, because as I'm starting to play this mirror,
Mm-hmm.
I think the Dracotail Sting is a really good card in the mirror match. I
Yeah,
think it's really good. And you're trying to hold resources and stuff. I mean, they can hit, this thing can hit the traps, it can hit, the Ethereum target or anything that. So there was a consideration. I can ash that if I was trying to do a Brandon Fusion play or the Frix will bring something back instead of I just have to let the flame resolve. But by using Ketu first, that's one of my strongest spells. I have to ash it at that point
yeah,
and just accept Sting and not ignore Horn or anything else.
yeah. I think last like theoretical thing I wanted to mention was because you drew Ash Blossom and it's recyclable, so a same thing in like the Fire King deck whenever you could like Sunlight Wolf recycle it forever. Because you have Galamo or not Galamo, sorry, Arthelion, you can recycle that card continuously if you expect this matchup to get into a grind. So if you lead Galamo, he flames it, whatever, you can then maybe let it resolve and then hold Ash for Sting, and that way the
Yeah.
Sting will not like banish the Ash Blossom if you try and target later with Arthelion. So that's the one way you can potentially try and like maintain value for the course of the game is just like constantly ashing all the traps.
Because there's a world actually, if you let the flame resolve, um, you can ash this thing and then possibly destroy the horn as well, or at least force it.
Mm.
And you got more trade value that way. As I'm looking at this replay now, and side note, it's very fun to learn this stuff, even though there's a lot of like missteps and stuff like that. This
Yeah,
deck is very fun to play, and along with this format, um, really enhances like technical play and stuff. And
yeah,
um, both games that I've lost felt like one card that I could have done better. And some of these games, like if you don't, it snowballs very quickly, and then goes downhill pretty quickly from there, and you have to go
mm,
to the next game and whatnot.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah, from here it gets pretty rough. I think the last thing,
I,
the reason why you use Rahu first is because Ketsu gets the most value when you have cards in hand. And
yeah,
yeah, as you just saw, like you had Rahu, but you only had two more spells in hand, so you couldn't even
yeah.
really activate it at that point.
also, I don't know what happened here, but he can also can't make Lubellion. He's had a light and a
Oh,
Albaz,
so
so
yeah, Albion Dragon, yeah.
Yeah. Supposed to be
And that honestly
the
may have
other
given
one.
you potential to make like a Secretarion with Albaz plus Frixel or whatever, like maybe a Mysterion to try and get you back into the game. Seems pretty doomed either way. Frixel. Oh, okay, see. Oh, that's the resolve. Okay,
Yeah,
so
yeah. So that's supposed to be the the other one.
ah, that's the end of that one. So your pan pops Murder Jade, you let it both die, and then on your turn, summon everything back and go. So I think those are really insightful discussion. We'll do more of this if this is a matchup you want to see. Let us know what other matchups you are interested in down below. Any final words before us?
I think one of the matchups that we can cover next probably is Dracotail into Yummy. I know that was
Go.
something that I'm testing as well. So perhaps for another video we can try that. And then I think with that we'll have a nice sort of assortment of Dracotail versus all three of the expected top decks: the mirror match, Mitsurugi, and Yami. And I think that'll give us like a comprehensive view of like the matchup into those various matchups.
Like,
Yeah, I agree. Very insightful of all these matchups. Very refreshing that it's not just a lot of like one card combos and stuff like that. Can actually
yeah,
like push through boards and stuff like that. So very good.
agreed. Alrighty, thank you, boys, as always, and I'll see you in the next one.